Non, je jure. C'est qu'aux yeux de merde. Ah, ouf. Ok, mission. Bon, on va suivre le tuto. Hein. Tazi Kazakh. Sans de mauvaise qualité. Ok.
In this video, we are going to cover the core concepts of four-stroke cycle, engine capacity, torque, and power. The most common
On va faire
kind
un
of
liquide
car
turbo,
engine is
tu
the
vas voir.
four-stroke engine, named after the four strokes the piston must travel to complete one cycle of combustion. These four strokes are affectionately known as suck, squeeze, bang, and blow. The first stroke moves down the piston while a fuel-air mixture is sucked into the combustion chamber. The second stroke moves the piston up the cylinder again, compressing the mixture. The third stroke starts with a bang, as the spark plug ignites the compressed, explosive mixture. The expanding gas from this explosion pushes down the piston and thus generates power. The fourth and final stroke moves the piston up, pushing the exhaust out of the combustion chamber. During this cycle, the exhaust and intake valves open and close at appropriate times to allow for fuel mixture intake, its compression, and exhaust to be blown out. Engine sizes are generally measured in capacity, either in litres, cubic centimetres, or cubic inches. An engine's capacity is the maximum volume for each cylinder, multiplied by how many cylinders the engine has. This is an example with a 2-litre inline-4 engine. Here, the 4 cylinders each have a maximum volume of half a litre. Larger capacity engines have the potential to make more power, but they will normally use more fuel. This is due to the extra friction caused by the larger surface area of the engine's internal components. There are two distinctly different measurable quantities an engine produces: power and torque.
Bien fait quand même.
You can think of torque as how
Complet,
strong the
quoi.
explosions push against the pistons. Power is a combination of how big the explosions are and how many happen per second. Power is the only useful measure of how hard the engine can accelerate a car. Torque just helps describe how that power is delivered. Power is the measure of how much work is done per second. Torque is the measure of force. I'll give you an example in the form of a problem commonly faced by us Australians. Your mates, Steve-O and Robbo, have to move 8 slabs of beer from the tray of Robbo's ute to the shed. Robbo decides to carry 4 slabs at once. This makes him pretty slow, so he takes 4 minutes to get to the shed. Steve-O decides the best way is to carry 1 slab at a time, but to run to the shed as fast as he can. This only takes him 1 minute to go to the shed and back. They both do the same amount of work, moving 4 slabs in 4 minutes. And thus they both make the same power, but they have 2 different ways of doing it. Robbo uses a lot of strength, but walks slowly. He is a high torque, low RPM engine. Steve-O uses less strength, but runs a lot faster. He is a low torque, high RPM engine. A different perspective is to see an engine as an air pump. To make more power, you need to pump more
Ça,
air.
vous avez compris avec
This
Steve
can
et
be done
Robot.
by having a bigger capacity, sucking in more air with every stroke, giving you stronger bangs and more torque. Or by making the engine run to a higher speed, sucking in more air every second, making more bangs every second, which makes more power from the same amount of torque. Engines, like most things, are a series of trade-offs. Making more power from an engine might come at the expense of worse fuel economy, higher emissions, and lower durability. Your job will be to produce engines suitable to your desired application. This could be anything from supercar engines that live fast and die young, to a long-lasting, durable family car motor.
Ok.
Compression describes the ratio at which the fuel-air mixture is compressed from the volume at the bottom of the intake stroke to the volume at the top of the compression stroke. More compression lets you extract more energy from the same amount of fuel, gaining you power for free. But there are a couple of serious trade-offs. Higher compression will cause a hotter burn of the fuel-air mixture. This increases the engine's output of harmful nitrogen oxides, NOx, although the effect can be counteracted by the use of a three-way catalytic converter. The hotter temperatures can also cause premature ignition of the fuel-air mixture. This is known as knocking and can be very damaging and destructive to the engine. Higher octane fuels are more resistant to knocking, thus many highly tuned engines require premium fuels with high octane ratings.
Donc un faible indice d'octane. On donne combien de puissance? On est d'accord.
In this video, we are going to cover both what a cam is, as well as cam profile. Cams are made of an egg-shaped disc placed on a shaft. As the cam rotates, the peak of the egg shape will press down on the top of a valve, forcing the valve to open. As the peak of the cam passes, the valve is closed by a spring pushing the valve back against the cam. Engines have multiple cams placed along a cam shaft, rotated at different angles to open the valves at the different times required by each piston. Cam profile describes how far and for how long the cam opens the valves during the various strokes. At higher engine speeds, you can make lots more power by keeping the valves wider for longer, using the inertia of the air rushing in to squeeze more into the cylinder. This is a trade-off, however, as holding the valves open for longer will make the engine push air and fuel back out the valves, making it lose power at lower engine speeds, consume lots more fuel, run very roughly at idle, increases emissions, and in extreme cases, shoot flames out the exhaust. Cam profile causes complex changes in the way the engine produces torque. If you look at the graph, this shows how torque changes. The high values only become usable with very high revving engines.
Je pourrais jamais la faire tourner.
There are two fundamentally different aspiration types. Naturally aspirated engines are basic four-stroke engines, where the engine sucks in air purely through atmospheric pressure and the suction of the piston traveling down the cylinder. Forced induction refers to any method used to force air into an engine at greater than atmospheric pressure. This allows the cylinders to fill with more air than they can inhale through suction alone, effectively increasing the capacity of the engine. Using forced induction, an engine can achieve much higher power outputs without needing a bulky, less fuel-efficient, large-capacity engine. Neither does it have the poor low RPM performance and reliability problems of a highly tuned, naturally aspirated motor. There are two variants of forced induction, both comprising a pump to force air into the engine, but using different methods to drive the pump. Supercharging is the oldest and simplest method of forced induction. It consists of an air pump that is driven by the engine via a belt. As a supercharger is directly driven by the engine, it responds instantly to changes in engine speed, and makes for a responsive and torquey engine with appreciably more power. However, a supercharger also requires a significant portion of the engine's power to operate. Therefore, both fuel economy and maximum power output are relatively poor compared to turbochargers. A turbocharger makes use of the energy in the engine's exhaust gases to spin up a freewheeling turbine. The turbine drives a compressor wheel, which is then used to force air into the engine. Because a turbo makes use of the energy contained in the exhaust to drive itself, It wastes very little engine power and has the potential to create a very powerful engine. As the turbine is not directly connected to the engine and relies on the flow of exhaust gas, it doesn't always respond instantly to changes in throttle and tends to operate poorly at low RPM, particularly in powerful engines when a very large turbocharger is used. Fuel mixture adjusts the average air-fuel ratio the engine is using. A ratio of 14.7 parts of air to 1 part of fuel is known as the stoichiometric mixture, STOIC for short. This is the ideal ratio at which there is the exact amount of air to fully combust all of the fuel. A mixture with more fuel than STOIC is known as rich. A rich mixture can produce more power and burns cooler, so is less likely to knock. However, tends to produce more emissions as some of the fuel remains unburnt. The opposite of this is a lean mixture where there is less fuel than STOIC. This is great for economy, but has the opposite effects to a rich mixture. Therefore, a lean mixture will produce less power and burn hotter, so is more likely to knock. Ignition timing refers to when the spark plug fires relative to the position of the piston. As it takes some time for the spark to set off combustion, the spark must be fired before the piston reaches the top of the cylinder, thus causing the highest combustion pressure to occur when the piston reaches the top. The faster the engine spins, the earlier the spark needs to be. The earlier the spark happens, the more advanced the ignition timing is said to be. More advanced timing usually allows you to extract more power from combustion, making for a more efficient engine, but can cause knock in high compression engines running low-octane fuel. The later the spark happens is known as retarded timing. Retarded timing will reduce power, but can allow an engine to run on poor quality fuel.
What? Mais non.